Good evening and welcome to DarkHour Paranormal. Folks, tonight we have quite the special treat for you. In fact, I have the entire Third Phase of Moon panel with us to discuss some topics at large. And tonight I have one specific question that I have been dying to ask these guys. Although we've had conversations personally, we never really touched upon it in this way. So what I'm going to do is ask this question. I'm going to move around the round table here, and we're going to get some insight and answers from all of these brilliant minds you see in front of you here. All right, guys, so here's the question I've been thinking about. Lou Elizondo, at the end of the 180 days, proclaimed that what we were given during that time was only a preliminary dive into what we might see next. Now, there was a very lengthy video that came out recently from our government that showcased many anomalies in our skies. But are we simply getting the back end of what our military factions deem as inconsequential to their operations, and thus putting it forward and disseminating it into the public at large? Or are we seeing footage of older technology being exercised, promoted in the way of non-identity, and then feigned curiosity when we're getting some of this evidence from our governments? Brent, let's start with you, brother. What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, exactly, Michael. That's the biggest question going on right now. And is our government going to release any of this information? Well, they kind of just softly, slow drip some stuff that really doesn't bring much to the table. Everybody here at Third Phase Moon has received evidence that blows away any of the stuff that's being shown on the major media. Now, is Lou a guy that's working on the inside, kind of a double agent? Some people say he may be the new Doty in the field, bringing out misinformation and confusing the masses. That's a possibility. I know Dr. J has a relationship with Lou's manager, and we met him personally. He seemed like a pretty cool guy. But I don't know why Lou doesn't ever come onto our show. He'll come onto these smaller platform YouTube channels, these guys that are kind of under the radar, so he doesn't really get much of a audience. He should go out to the bigger channels and put himself out there and be asked some of the big questions that we're all asking right now. And what's going to happen in the future? Is the government, I think they're basically keeping it close to the vest. They're never going to really give disclosure entirely. But again, they might have to soft drip things more and more since the public starts to demand it. And let's see what happens in the future.
Very, very well spoken. I have to agree with you on many respects with that. As time goes on and they slowly drip this technology out to us, it becomes something in the way of normalcy, the way that we now carry cell phones around. And 20 years ago, we would have been, gawking at such technology, considering what we have today. So maybe as we move forward, as we're saying here, we're going to, again, find some sort of even balance in way of what we're getting, but then it wouldn't seem like high technology to us because it's already been applied in so many different ways. Rich, what are your thoughts on this here? Are we looking at the evidence that the government's giving to us and saying, okay, they're on the same level as we are in terms of curiosity, or is this something antiquated that they're giving us and then passing off as something more current?
Yeah, of course that's what they're doing, making it as if it's current, brand new. But we all know where it comes from. We all know they've been working on it for 20, 30, 40, maybe even 50 years or more. So, as far as Lou Elizondo goes, I don't trust the guy as far as I can throw him. I'll proudly say that and put my face to it because we've gotten a lot of contradictory statements by him. Is it a threat? Yeah, it's a threat. And then is it not a threat? Well, it could be a threat. Well, is it or isn't it? Well, it could be. It might be. Is China or Russia involved? Are they the threat? No, they're not. And then later on, well, they might be. So you see a lot of that, a lot of flip-flopping and contradictory statements. So as far as technology and all that, where it's coming from and how old is it, I really don't know, but it's just going to be the same answer throughout from all of us. It's probably something they've been working on and we're just getting it now. As far as the future goes, and the announcement that we've been talking about that may come around Thanksgiving, that could be the major technology breakthrough associated with alien technology or found alien technology. So we'll see.
Well, maybe Lou actually knows about, what we've been given in way of this inside information. Maybe he's privy to it already, and perhaps this is what he's alluding to when he makes a comment like, well, we're only at the tip of the iceberg here. There's lots more to come. But, you bring up a good point, Rich, with the way that his narrative has flip-flopped so many times. Blake, what are your thoughts on this particular notion here? And is Lou somebody in way of trust when he says something like this, even though we're seeing evidence, at least again peripherally, that this is something that might actually occur? We'd be given something more from the governments in way of this high technology and information.
Well, the thing about Lou and the technology that might come from this kind of drip of information coming in from the Pentagon, Lou's obtaining these videos. There's a problem that I have with this whole subject matter in regards to Lou's coming forth with this evidence, is that we're getting partial videos. We're not seeing the entire length of the video from beginning to end. We received videos. Just last week, we received a video. It lasted for about 20 minutes of a Homeland Security capturing some kind of anomalous object. We don't know what it was. We're not claiming anything except that it's an anomaly. That's what we do. We share the phenomenon on Third Phase of Moon as fast as possible to get the word out. And we're not claiming we're experts. We're not claiming we know what we're talking about. All we're claiming is that we get the information from the people and we put it out as fast as possible. My problem with Lou is nothing personal, except if you're going to bring yourself out into the public like this, you can't, beat around the bush with the information. You say what you know or don't say anything at all, because that's where the water is getting muddy, because you're saying one thing, but then when a question's asked in regards to certain things, you say you can't talk about it. So don't say anything if you can't bring forth the evidence, in my opinion, because it's just not really doing anybody any favors at this moment, except making everybody kind of confused.
I have to agree with that as well. Yes, as Michael had mentioned before, we're looking for that physical evidence. It's something that we're all waiting for, sort of teetering with words that we have now. Anecdotal evidence in way of experience. We have intellectual thought and analysis. We have critical thinking that's all going into this. And yet, again, we don't have anything more than what we have, and we can't go further without what we need. So with this in mind, I'm going to bring it out to Michael Schratt, who I got to say, thanks for being with us, man. I know you're very busy, but this is certainly a treat, and you are part of the Third Phase panel here. But again, thanks for being with us. What are your thoughts on this proposed question here?
The best way that I could answer that would be to recommend a very interesting book by Leonard Stringfield himself. And this is the book right here, Leonard Stringfield, UFO Crash Retrievals, the complete investigation status reports, all of his reports in one binder, in one book. And it's expensive. It costs about $70, but it's well worth it. It's the most riveting material there is, period. And I'm going to give you an example, just one example within this. Now, there's dozens of crash retrieval cases in here. This is my favorite example. So I spoke to the gentleman who interviewed a Marine who actually did speak to Leonard Stringfield. Now, this is December 1963, literally days after Kennedy was assassinated, November 22nd, 1963 in Dallas. So this is December 1963. This U.S. Marine is called out of bed at the middle of the night, and he is told to board a plane that had blacked out windows. And once he got on the plane, he was flown 3 hours from Cherry Point, North Carolina, to an undisclosed location that he didn't even know it was. It could have been an Air Force facility. It could have been a Navy facility. He doesn't know. And when he got there, his job, since he was an MP, he was to guard something within this hangar. So these hangar doors open up. Inside this hangar is about a 40-foot diameter dish-shaped craft that looks like a fat Frisbee or a fat hamburger. It's about 12 feet tall. It has about 8 elliptically shaped cutout porthole windows that are opaque, wrapped around the outer circumference of the craft. The whole thing is propped up on scaffolding, and they had a catwalk that was built all around the craft. And then directly on the floor was a white circle, and his job was to guard for a period of 2 weeks, guard that craft, and make sure that no one even got anywhere near that. So this is a composite rendering of what the craft actually looked like based on his original sketches, which I have copies of his original sketches. And he mentioned that there were teams of white lab coat technicians that were looking at this craft. They were walking under the craft. He also said that they tried 3 different ways to breach the hull of this device, this object. Number 1, they tried diamond tip drill bits, and that didn't work. Okay. Then they tried jackhammers. That didn't work. And then they brought in a large 18-wheeler tractor trailer with a electrical generating device on the back of it that had about 2 3-inch diameter cables that ran from outside into the hangar. And this was a laser device, and they were shining the laser on the skin of the craft. When they moved it away, it was warm to the touch, but made no effect whatsoever. So if we have been working on these vehicles the past 70 years, and we figured out how to implement that into our, let's say, assets, it would be unbeatable. It would be unbeatable. Now, I was told also, according to Leonard Stringfield, that there was one time where this Marine was left alone in this facility. He had a small Minax camera, and he took a photograph. And back in '86, that photograph was lost in a flood. So again, the evidence is always 2 steps ahead of us. However, the last day he was there, when he was guarding the craft, he said that it was put on a lowboy tractor trailer. They had put a tarp on the top of it and then put chains on that, and was being moved to another location. So they keep moving these things from place to place. He also heard that bodies were recovered and possibly one was still alive. Now that checks out with what Don Schmidt had talked about with the Roswell craft, that 5 bodies were recovered, 1 was still alive, and the final one made it till May of 1948. That's confirmed by Mac Magruder and a whole bunch of other Air Force pilots who were at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base back in 1948. So it looks like there at least was 1 survivor. So in a nutshell, that is my favorite case from Leonard Stringfield. If we can get to that evidence, which they do have it, there are also cases of B-29 bombers flying over the Arctic regions with all the gun cameras rolling. They had monitoring devices, all this caught on motion picture film reel, where a craft would pop up from the ice. They would go directly in back of the trailing edge of the main wing of the B-29 and just ahead of the leading edge of the horizontal stabilizer, where all the cameras were rolling, and they got all that film. So it's certainly not a lack of evidence. It's getting access to the evidence.
You couldn't have said it better. Honestly, I really do believe that they do have all of this evidence, and it's tucked behind closed doors. And again, that brings us back to the question, what they're giving us now is obviously some watered down version of whatever they decide to give us. Again, sort of feeding the breadcrumbs to the peasants, just enough to keep them alive in way of this topic. Dr. J, what are your thoughts on the evidence that they've been giving us? And again, just to kind of reiterate here, is this more feigned interest and curiosity in way of awe that, these military personnel are saying, hey, this is amazing, this is great footage, we don't really know what it is? Do we believe that?
Well, here's the thing, is you got to remember when I interviewed Lou, is he specifically said that we're getting the low-hanging fruit, really the crap, right? Because that it may contain some sensitive information, where our ships are. We don't want our enemies to know what capabilities our ships have. I mean, what sort of missiles are on these destroyers or aircraft carriers or these F-18s. These are things that's exactly why we're seeing literally the crap. And he's seen 4K, 8K, the top of the line video. And the reason why poor guy can't comment is because the 10-10 agreements from long ago are no longer 10-10. I mean, this could be like 25 to life for him, not to mention a massive fine. This guy could spend the rest of his life if he gives you something more than the low-hanging fruit. I can also tell you, aside from that interview, I'm consistently talking to Jesse, getting the information from him and others. So you may be seeing him on interviews here and there, but that's not the entirety of his work. If it is, then yeah, that's a sadly waste, but I promise you it is not. I would expect things to come out as the gears of government turn really slow. And Brent, let me say this to you. I promised you, he will come to Third Phase of the Moon. you will see Lou Elizondo on Third Phase of the Moon on top of what you've been showing, which is me interviewing him. It may be 3 months, it may be 6 months, but it will happen. He made that promise. I made that promise to you guys, so just give it time.
All right, looking forward to that one. Good one, Jay.
Yeah, fantastic. And Apolla, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this topic at large. Obviously, we've been discussing this here, and we've hit a lot of different angles. What are your opinions on, this particular topic here?
I don't know Lou Elizondo personally. I haven't had the pleasure of actually interviewing him myself and really feeling him out myself. But I agree with what Dr. J said about, I'm sure because of different programs he works for and being one of the main spokespeople for the UFO disclosure topic with the media, there's probably a lot of sensitive topics that he can't get into for certain reasons in regards to the fact that, these could be dangerous to report on at large. But really, I feel that, disclosure, when I first came into this community and I started going to conferences, the way disclosure was discussed to me and my understanding of it is that, there's disclosure, the idea of disclosure, but then there's the idea of soft disclosure. And that comes as, the government, like, for example, the government could come in, they'll be like, oh, okay, we found these microorganisms on Mars. And then a little later on, sorry. And then a little later on, then they'll be like, oh, we found these mammals on this other planet over here. And, so this could all be going on slowly when really our government could already possibly be working with 3 ET races for all I know. I don't know that. I'm not claiming that, but I do know that the ex-Prime Minister of Defense for Canada did say that the U.S. has been working with 3 ET races. And was it the Prime Minister of the Space Administration in Israel? He came forward and said the same thing. So it's interesting. But, I think that, there's just this like slow trickle of disclosure. And what I always ask everyone is why the secrecy in the first place? Like, people say like, oh, this is a sensitive topic. Like a lot of people couldn't handle it because of religious backgrounds. And, there's this whole aspect of, would people completely lose it if they thought there were aliens out there and it's, a huge threat? Like, if it was a threat, then, we would have been invaded a long time ago. And, there was all this evidence of ufology in our ancient past. I've been super interested in the idea of ancient aliens. Before Ancient Aliens was a show, that is like my main line of research is forbidden archaeology and all of the ancient connections with UFOs. There's a lot there. And, disclosure, it's like there was this secrecy that probably happened through, religious programming, back maybe 1,000 years ago or so, this started happening. And I just feel there's so much there that has been hidden for so long. And it's going to be really amazing to see more of this come forward. And I think it's just kind of come to the point where it's almost embarrassing for these people on top that are holding on to all this information, because everyone knows at this point. People know what's going on. And so, something I always like to say to everyone is, why are we waiting for the government to give us disclosure? Why does it have to be up to them? Why can't it be up to all of us, to the whistleblowers, to the people who have worked in these different programs? Why don't all of them come together, and people like us who, have been working on these different shows and interviewing these different people and doing this research for so long? Why can't it be up to us? Why are we waiting for the government to give us disclosure? There's so many people that are working in these black budget programs, so many people that have been working for these different agencies. And, obviously they're probably threatened on many levels to not disclose certain information. But, I think it really is. It's up to the people to bring disclosure forward. We don't need to wait for the government to give us disclosure.
But we're trying, right? Aren't we trying to do that? It's the evidence. The government scoops it up if they find out about it. Anyway, I had to say something. I couldn't say nothing.
No, but you're absolutely right. That's what it is. And I think that a lot of people look towards the government in a habitual way because, you know, in times past, the government was supposed to take care of you. And I think some people still believe that is the primary role and that they might actually be doing that when in fact, obviously, that's a false notion and, you know, they won't get anything in way of what they believe as time goes on. You know, the disclosure more than likely will come from the individual, but it won't just be the individual on the street. It'll be some of these people who can say a few things out of the corner of their mouth without risking their lives to share this. And it will all be built on implication like it has been. But eventually that implication grows into some sort of mountain that's tangible. And then we have to step back and look at this and say, all right, as a totality, what we're seeing in front of us might actually lead the direction that we all assumed in the first place. Well, listen, guys, Blake Cousins, Brent Cousins, Rich from GUFON, Dr. J from Dr. J Radio Live, Apolla Asteria from Apolla's Odyssey, and of course, Michael Schratt, an awesome historian, and he has been very active with Third Phase of Moon here. I want to thank all of you guys for joining us tonight and spending some time looking at this topic. Again, we need to continue to reiterate and ask these questions at large, of course, until we get that physical evidence and we can have a different discussion altogether. Guys, thank you so much. We'll see you next time on Dark Hour Paranormal.